The 8 Yu-Gi-Oh anime are filled with incredibly memorable duels, but in this video we are ranking the best duel in each show against each other in a top 8 style video. Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh Everything, and welcome back to another video. So I am going to be ranking my #1 duel in every show, from Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters all the way through Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, and obviously your #1 duel in each show might be different than mine, so I will go through each show and tell you which duel I have at the top. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, I have Yugi versus Kaiba in Battle City. In Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, I have Johan / Yubel versus Ryo Marufuji, Hell Kaiser. In Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, I have Yusei versus Kiryu round 1. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, I have Yuma versus Nash at the end of Zexal. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, I have Shun versus Sora. In Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS, I have Soulburner versus Revolver round 2. In Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, I have Yuga versus Luke round 2, which was the Season 1 conclusionary duel. And in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, I have Yudias versus Kuaidul round 2. Those are all the duels that I consider to be the best in their show. And without further ado, let's begin. Here is my rankings of the best duel in each show. I hope you enjoy. Number 8, Yuga versus Luke round 2 from Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. So the best duel from 7s kicks off this list, and Yuga versus Luke is a wonderful, wonderful duel to conclude Season 1. There's an amazing amount of twists and turns in this duel, and as a viewer, you really had no idea which way it was going to go. Honestly, the safe bet was on Yuga, who lost earlier in the season, and usually the protagonist wins these sorts of rematches. However, that was not going to be the case in this duel. Luke summons all 3 of his Giases at the very end of the duel, and it seems like Yuga has the duel won as he's cleared Luke's field, but Luke is able to activate a trap card at the end of the battle phase and ends up destroying Yuga's 7's Road Magician in order to get the win. This entire final turn is all done, by the way, with only 100 life points. It's one of the greatest single turns ever. I think the overall story was maybe a little bit lacking comparatively to some of the other duels that we're going to be discussing on this list. And so, for that reason, I do have this one at the bottom. Number 7, Yusei versus Kiryu round 1, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. My favorite 5Ds duel comes in at number 7. This is the first time we see a proper Signer versus Dark Signer duel, and it is a good one, and it's the perfect way to kick off one of the most memorable arcs in the entire franchise. I loved the backstory in this duel. Kiryu used to be a part of Team Satisfaction, which consisted of Yusei, Jack, Crow, and himself, and we learn what happened way back then that caused the schism in their friend group and led to Kiryu becoming a Dark Signer. Kiryu believes that Yusei stabbed him in the back and was the reason that he got arrested, but that really wasn't the case. Kiryu just lost his mind, and Yusei felt he went too far when he stabbed a police officer and threw Kiryu off the officer. Kiryu, of course, took this as Yusei siding with the police, and Kiryu ended up basically dying in prison in order to be reborn as a Dark Signer. So the drama that was in this duel was absolutely incredible, and the big shock is that Yusei actually loses. I know he doesn't technically lose because his D-wheel gave out, but come on, this is realistically a loss, and it's really the only loss that Yusei had in the entire show. And he never really fully gets over this defeat until he defeats Kiryu in a rematch. But this is such a good duel, in my opinion. Again, I think overall the dueling action maybe causes it to be towards the bottom of this particular category, but this is still a top 10 duel of all time. It's just weird putting it towards the bottom of a list, but all the duels in this category are complete titans. Number 6, Yubel / Johan versus Kaiser, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Coming in 6th is my favorite duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Two of the most fun decks to watch in GX being Crystal Beasts and Cyber Dragons finally go against each other at the end of Season 3. At this point, it's been pretty much all but confirmed that Ryo is going to die from a heart condition and wants one final duel to go out on. Midway through the epic battle, Ryo decides his only goal is to save Johan from Yubel, as he comes to terms that he is going to die regardless of the result. For me, the fact that Ryo was dying made this duel that much better and that much more intense. Not because of the fact that he was dying, but because whenever Yu-Gi-Oh! Utilizes death or has these really intense stakes, the duels usually just become that much greater. And this duel leaves you with one of the best final turns ever. Cyber End Dragon and Rainbow Dark Dragon both have 4,000 attack. After these duelists raise their monster's attack, it looks like Rainbow Dark Dragon is going to have the upper hand until Ryo uses Cybernetic Zone to remove Cyber End Dragon and to revive it with double the attack, increasing it to 16,000. And for a split second, you actually think that Ryo Marufuji is going to pull it off until you realize that Power Bond, the same card that made him famous, is going to end his life and end the duel. It's such an incredible story beat. The emotional weight of this one is superb, and for me, it's the best one in GX and deserves to be here at number 6. Number 5, Yudias versus Kuaidul Round 2, Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. So I think the best duel in all of Rush Yu-Gi-Oh! Kicks off our top 5 here. This duel is absolutely incredible. First of all, the atmosphere is wonderful, with both of these Valkyrians being literal giants, and both of them using versions of their decks that are like cards that the other cast of characters have. It's kind of weird to describe, but basically each duelist is using like the ace or a signature card of one of the other characters, and it's a really, really cool way to portray this duel through the decks. But one of my favorite things about this is the Kuaidul and Yudias dynamic. Kuaidul feels very inferior. He loved the creator, basically the person who created him, and he wondered why the creator loved Yudias as much as he did. And when Kuaidul is about to lose and tries to forcibly take over Yudias' body, and Yudias is going to let him do that, Kuaidul realizes exactly why the creator loved him. He literally realizes the answer on his own, and I absolutely love when that conclusion is reached. Reminds me so much of the Yuma Vector moment at the end of Zexal, which is one of my favorite moments in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! This one is very similar to that. Kuaidul eventually lets Yudias go and vanishes from this world. It's a super emotional duel. The dueling action, I thought maybe wasn't as good as the other ones that are ahead of it, but still, the storytelling, the dynamic, really, really good. Number 4, Yuma versus Nash, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. My favorite Zexal duel is an absolute classic that concludes one of the greatest Yu-Gi-Oh! Rivalries we have ever seen, which is that between Yuma and Shark. These two duel it out to decide the fate of the Astral and the Baryon world at the end of Zexal, and the dueling action in this duel might be the greatest dueling action we have ever gotten in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel. I am that high on it. The back and forth, the symbolism with all the Baryon Emperor cards and all the Utopia monsters. Ugh, dude, it is just so good. And the end of this duel is absolutely insane. One of the most unique ways someone has ever won a duel. Yuma uses double up chance, which lets his monster attack again with double attack, but he decides to cancel his attack because he feels there has to be a better way than defeating Shark and destroying the Baryon world. But little did Yuma know, Shark's Glory of the Seven Emperors was going to give him life points equal to the change in his life points, and because there was no change in his life points due to Yuma canceling his attack, his life points became 0. If you love unpredictability in a duel, Yuma is your guy, and Zexal might be your show. This perfectly summed up Yuma's dueling style and personality, and was the perfect end to almost a perfect arc, honestly, in the Baryon Onslaught arc. And Shark's own words sum it up best. He says, "I knew you would use double up chance, but to cancel your attack, I really didn't expect that. This is an incredible one, and maybe should even be higher than this, but I have it in at number 4. Number 3, Soulburner versus Revolver Round 2, Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS. So in my opinion, these top 4 duels are probably the top 4 duels of all time as well. There might be like number 2 duels, if that makes sense, from certain shows that I have ranked above number 1 duels from other shows, but I feel pretty confident that these 4 are not only the 4 best number 1 duels in their show, but also the 4 greatest duels of all time. Soulburner versus Revolver is an absolute masterpiece. An element I loved about this duel is that it wasn't a life or death duel, which for Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS was genuinely a breath of fresh air. I felt this was easily the most in-depth and relatable duel that we had during the show. Soulburner was angry at Revolver for what happened due to the Lost Incident, and so the two did what every character does in Yu-Gi-Oh! And decided to duel to get to display their feelings to one another. The exposition for both of these characters was amazing. We learned that Homura blames himself for the death of his parents, since they died while searching for him. Revolver also talks about the afterlife in such a profound way, stating that he only takes actions he takes in the waking world, so that people waiting for him in heaven won't be ashamed of him, and he'll be able to face them with the utmost confidence and respect for himself. The philosophical exchanges between these two took this duel to a level that dialogue alone doesn't take many duels. I actually think dialogue and storyline-wise, this might be the greatest duel in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, at least for me personally. We get to see an appearance from Flame, who is able to convey the message that Revolver is preaching as a message that is correct, which is enough to convince Soulburner to take control of his actions and his life. Soulburner then goes on to beat Revolver, which is an outcome that many of us were not expecting. A duel filled with emotionally powerful dialogue, a surprise guest appearance, a shock ending. Sign me up for that any day of the week. This was one of the only duels that did not have an Ignis at stake or life and death at stake, but what it did have at stake was the growth and development of a human, which is so much easier for many viewers, including myself, to relate to. There are so many things that hold us back in life from becoming the best possible versions of ourselves, and this duel conveyed that message in a perfect way. This is the best duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS, and it's the 3rd best duel of all time. Number 2, Shun vs. Sora, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. This is the greatest spin-off duel we have ever gotten, and I went back and forth between this and the Soulburner versus Revolver one, but after watching both masterpieces earlier today, I decided to still keep Shun vs. Sora at this spot. Going into this duel, we knew there were a lot more to these characters than met the eye. We didn't know much about Shun or his motivations, and we could tell that something was a little off about Sora. The duel starts with Heartland being the action field, and Shun is immediately bothered by this. Shun continually accuses Sora of destroying his hometown, to which Sora denies and doesn't know what he's talking about. The action in the first half is really good. Shun lays into Sora and deals blow after blow, to the point where the Heartland field starts to look destroyed. Sora then does these insane moves to dodge a collapsing building and lands with a wicked smile on his face. And that is when the duel kicks into overdrive. I can't watch the last like 15 minutes of this duel without getting chills. Still to this day, the emotion, the reveal, it's all so brilliantly done. Shun asks Sora how it feels to be hunted. Sora laughs it off and completely loses his mind, calling this duel a hunting game, and it quickly goes from 0 to 100, which we all kind of knew was going to happen based on the early stages of the duel, but I don't think many of us could have expected it to reach this level. A crazy plot twist with Sora's character, and Shun ends up coming back to defeat him with the "we will always take back our comrades" line as one of the greatest delivered lines in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! The music sets the tone so well for everything going on. Between Sora's reveal, Shun's comeback, this duel is so amazing, and if you haven't watched Arc 5, watch Arc 5 for this duel. It is absolutely worth it, and it deserves to be number 2 on this list, just missing out on the number 1 spot. Number 1, Yugi versus Kaiba in Battle City, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. So I went with the historical pick, and if you've followed me for a very long time, you know I have often said this is the greatest duel in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I still feel that way. And I think the reason why this tops Shun versus Sora or Soulburner versus Revolver is the iconic nature and the well execution of the deep-seated rivalry between these two characters just takes it to a level that most character pairings can't possibly reach. Yugi versus Kaiba is the epitome of Yu-Gi-Oh! The two most iconic characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have their long-anticipated rematch after the infamous Exodia duel and the fluky duel in Duelist Kingdom, which resulted in Kaiba's win. Besides the anticipation of this titanic clash, the content of this duel was very enjoyable to watch. We had multiple different phases. Early on, both characters are trying to bring out their Egyptian god cards. When they both do, the cards transport them to Egypt, so we get some really good Egyptian backstory as well. And as the duel progresses, we see the characters utilizing their god cards' effects, only for their gods to eventually be destroyed. And then we move into the final phase, where it's all the classic cards. Black Magician, Buster Blader, Blue Eyes Ultimate. And the last 10 to 15 minutes of this duel are just incredible. Kaiba talks about how a win will bury his past and how obsessed he is with being the best duelist in the world and how he wants to reach a higher plane of being. Yugi, meanwhile, explains that anger and hatred are never something a person should use as motivation for their actions and ends up getting the better of Kaiba in an extremely intense last 2 turns. You really feel like Kaiba is going to win, but I love the symbolism of him not being able to come out victorious and that you can't build victory and triumph on a mountain of hate and bitterness. And I loved that that was at the core of not only the end of this duel, but the entire duel. You see how heartbroken Kaiba is when he realizes he's going to lose. And you almost feel kind of bad for him in a way because you know how much this duel meant to him. This duel is very long, and I know that is something that people criticize, but to me, whenever I watch it, I am thoroughly entertained, and I believe it's definitely worth your time. It's number 1 on this list, and I will argue any day of the week, Yugi Kaiba Battle City is the greatest duel in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And ladies and gentlemen, that wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed my rankings. Now, this video is really tough because not only are all of these duels A++ duels, but also you might be watching saying, well, no, the best duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS is Playmaker I, so I wouldn't even have ranked Revolver Soulburner. So, you know, this is kind of a fun list for that reason. But let me know what you think are the greatest duels in each show. And if you want to rank them, please do. You know, I love reading your guys' comments and opinions. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you in the comments, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys. Why can't we see